This happened about 2 years ago when I was working nights at this new hotel in Ohio, and we'd only been open for maybe 3 weeks if I remember right. So it was around 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, I think, and I was at the front desk watching some random YouTube video on my phone because Tuesday nights are always dead and nobody really comes in. I remember the Wi-Fi was being slow that night and I was thinking about ordering food from that pizza place down the street. This woman walks in and I look up and I literally just stared at her for a second because she looked exactly like my friend Sarah. And when I say exactly, I mean I genuinely thought it was Sarah at first, like same height, same brown hair with the blonde highlights that Sarah had just gotten done like a week before. And same everything really. She came up to the desk asking about room rates, and she even had this slight southern accent that Sarah has from when she lived in Atlanta for a couple years after college. I checked her in, trying to act normal, but it was really weird, so while I'm typing her info into our system, which was running super slow that night, I pulled out my phone, and I know this was unprofessional, but I said, "Hey, this is gonna sound really weird, but you look just like my friend," and I showed her a picture of Sarah from her Instagram. She barely looked at it and kind of pushed my phone away and said, "Yeah, I get that a lot." But in this really cold way that made me feel stupid for even bringing it up. She didn't smile or anything, and that's what really bothered me about it. Anyway, I gave her the key to room 217, which was one of our corner rooms, even though she didn't ask for one, and I just figured, whatever, give her a nice room, maybe she won't complain about me being weird earlier. So the night goes on, and it's pretty normal, and I'm back to watching videos and answering a couple emails from my manager about scheduling stuff. And the hotel AC was making these little clicking noises, which it always does, but it seemed louder that night. Or maybe I was just on edge, I don't know. Then at 2:17 a.m., and I remember the exact time because I looked at it later, my phone starts going crazy with texts from Jessica, who was working housekeeping that night. She's texting stuff like, "Stop, and it's not funny, and what the hell are you doing up there?" I'm confused because I'm literally sitting at the front desk not doing anything, so I text back, "What are you talking about?" Then my phone rings, and it's Jessica, and she sounds really freaked out, and she's breathing all heavy like she just ran up a flight of stairs or something. She says, "Why are you and Sarah standing in the hallway on 3rd floor just staring at me?" I tell her I'm at the front desk and Sarah isn't even working tonight, and she's not even in town because she's at her sister's wedding in Denver, and I saw the pictures earlier on Facebook, so I know she's there. Jessica starts getting more upset, and she's saying, "No, you're both up here right now, and you're just standing at the end of the hallway, and you're not moving, and you're not saying anything. You're just staring." Then I hear her scream through the phone, and she's running, and I can hear her footsteps, and then the call just cuts off, and there's nothing. I called our security guy, Dave, and told him to go check the 3rd floor, and he found Jessica locked in the supply closet, crying and shaking, really bad. But nobody else was up there, and the hallway was empty. I tried to brush it off and figured maybe Jessica was overtired or something, because we'd all been pulling long shifts since the hotel opened, and nobody was really sleeping right. But when I got home that morning around 7:30, something felt off in my apartment, and I can't really explain it, but it just felt wrong, like the air was different or something. My kitchen clock, the digital one on my microwave, was stuck at 2:17, which was weird because it had been working fine when I left for work the day before. I unplugged it and plugged it back in, and it was still stuck at 2:17. And on my kitchen table was a printed photo of me and Sarah, and it looked like it was taken at the hotel that night, but Sarah hadn't been there. I called her right away and woke her up, and she said she'd been asleep since 10, and she was still in Denver. The really messed up part is when that woman from 217 checked out later that morning, the day manager told me she had red hair and looked nothing like Sarah at all. He said she was like 5'2" and older, maybe in her 50s, which is nothing like what I saw. I still work at that hotel, but I always get this weird feeling during my shifts, especially around 2 a.m., and I don't take my breaks at 2:17 anymore. Sometimes when I'm alone at the desk, I swear I can feel someone standing right behind me doing exactly what I'm doing, but when I turn around, there's nobody there. My mom worked as a housekeeper at this seaside hotel that was about to have its grand opening, and I was helping out that summer for some extra money, and I was probably 19 or 20 at the time. It was really early, like 6 a.m., and we were getting all the rooms ready for the grand opening that weekend, and my mom was vacuuming room 8 on the second floor while I was down the hall, putting little shampoo bottles and towels in room 12 or 13, I think. The hallway smelled like cleaning supplies and fresh paint because everything was new. I heard my mom scream, and it wasn't like a normal scream, but like something really bad had happened, like she got hurt or something. So I dropped all the towels I was carrying and ran to room 8. I found her just standing there in the middle of the room, and she looked sick or something, and her face was really pale and her hands were shaking pretty bad. I asked her what happened, and at first she couldn't even talk, and she just kept pointing at the floor and saying the room moved and the whole room moved over and over again. At first I thought maybe she was having like a panic attack or something, because the job had been stressful, getting everything ready, and we'd been working really long days. But then she told me what actually happened, and I didn't know what to think. She said she was vacuuming near the window, and the vacuum was that old heavy kind that the hotel had bought used, and suddenly the carpet started rippling like water, like when you throw a rock in a pond, but it was going across the entire floor of the room. She said all the furniture lifted up and down, following this wave, like the bed and the nightstands, and even the little desk by the window, and she actually came off the ground too, for like 10 seconds, just floating up and down, with this invisible wave going through the room. Now my mom doesn't make stuff up, and she doesn't even watch scary movies because she thinks they're stupid and a waste of time. She's super practical, and she's the kind of person who has a logical explanation for everything and doesn't believe in ghosts or anything like that. But she was so freaked out, she couldn't even hold the cup of coffee I brought her from the break room because her hands were shaking that bad, and some of it spilled on her shirt. She grabbed my arm really tight, and it actually hurt a little, and she said, "We're not going in that room anymore." And I mean ever, and she really meant it. The hotel manager tried to get her to clean it the next day and even offered her extra pay, but she said she'd quit before going back in room 8, and she wasn't joking. They had to get other people to clean it. But here's the thing. 3 different housekeepers said they felt seasick in that room, which doesn't make any sense because, yeah, we were near the ocean, but the hotel was barely above sea level. And there's no reason for that. One girl who worked there said the curtains moved weird, and not like from the AC, but in these strange patterns that didn't match how air moves. And another one said she heard water sounds in the walls like sloshing around, but maintenance checked, and there were no pipe issues or anything wrong. The hotel still runs, and room 8 is still available for booking, but it gets requested way less than any other room, even though it's one of the nicer ones with an ocean view. People just don't want it for some reason. My mom still works there actually, and she just had her 10-year anniversary, but she takes the long way around that floor. so she doesn't have to walk past that room. She's never really talked about what happened that morning again, except once when we were at home watching TV and a commercial for some cruise came on, and she just said, "Water isn't supposed to move like that through solid ground," and then she went quiet again. I worked security at the Malacca Holiday Inn in Malaysia for about 3 years, and this happened during my second year there. So I'd been around long enough to know what was normal and what wasn't. These two women from Singapore checked in for some business conference that was happening in the city that week. They seemed totally normal, and I remember they were laughing with the desk staff about something. And one of them asked where the nearest Starbucks was, because she said she couldn't function without her morning coffee. I was doing my usual midnight rounds that night, and our rounds usually take about 45 minutes to go through the whole property because it's a pretty big hotel. When I passed room 314 on the 3rd floor, I heard this scratching sound coming from inside. At first I thought maybe they snuck in a cat or something, even though we don't allow pets, so I stopped outside the door to listen, because if they had an animal in there, I'd have to report it. But the scratching was weird, because it was coming from inside the walls, not from the room itself, and it was rhythmic, like scratch, 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 and then a pause, and then scratch, scratch, scratch again over and over in the same pattern. I was about to knock and ask if everything was okay when it just stopped completely, and it was dead quiet, so I figured maybe it was just pipes or something, and I kept walking and finished my rounds. But then at 2 a.m., I get this frantic call from the front desk saying the guests in 314 were calling down completely terrified and asking for security to come up there right now. When I got to the 3rd floor, I could hear it myself, and my stomach just dropped because I knew something was really wrong. There was this violent banging on their door, like someone was trying to break it down with their fists, and there was a man's voice shouting in Malay, saying "Sayang, saya sudah pulang, buka pintu," over and over, really loud and aggressive. For those who don't speak Malay, it means, "Dear, I am home, and let me in or open the door." The banging got louder, and the voice got angrier and more desperate, like whoever it was really needed to get inside that room. I ran down the hallway to their door, but when I got there, the hallway was completely empty and nobody was there. But I could still hear the banging, like it was coming from thin air or from everywhere at once. It didn't make any sense. From inside the room, I could hear the women crying, and one of them was reading from a Bible really loud in English and saying prayers, and the other one was on the phone with someone, maybe her family or something. I tried to tell them through the door that I was security, and it was safe to come out, but they wouldn't open it, and they just kept praying louder whenever the banging got worse. This went on for almost an hour, with the banging and the shouting and the praying, and I just stood there in the hallway not knowing what to do, because there was nobody to confront and nothing to stop. And then at exactly 3 a.m., it stopped, and just like that, it was instant silence, like someone flipped a switch and everything went quiet. The women didn't come out until sunrise, and when I walked them to their car in the parking lot, they were still shaking and had their bags packed. One of them asked me what was wrong with this place and why I didn't warn them. I told them what all the local staff know, but what the hotel doesn't exactly put in the brochures or on the website. The hotel was built on old Portuguese burial grounds from back in the colonial days when the Portuguese controlled this area. The locals say there's this Portuguese sailor who died at sea in the 1800s, and his body was never found, but his family buried an empty coffin in that cemetery where the hotel is now. They say he doesn't know he's dead and he thinks he's still trying to come home to his wife every night, and that's why he keeps banging on doors and asking to be let in. Those women checked out that morning and never came back, and I heard they left a really bad review online. Room 314 has more early checkouts than any other room in the hotel by far, and sometimes people leave in the middle of the night without even asking for a refund. They just want to get out. I still work there actually, and just started my 5th year. And during my night rounds, I still hear that scratching in the walls sometimes, especially on the 3rd floor near that room. And sometimes, usually around 2 a.m., I hear that voice calling out in the darkness, saying, "Sayang, saya sudah pulang," which means, "Dear, I am home." But I don't stop to investigate anymore, and I just keep walking and finish my rounds as fast as I can. The new security guys always ask about it when they hear it for the first time, and they look scared and confused, and I just tell them what the old guys told me when I started, which is to keep walking and don't answer if you hear someone calling your name,